Okay, welcome everybody to the meeting. I'll just read some of the rules and regs up before we start. This scrutiny committee is being conducted remotely in accordance with coronavirus regulations and the remote meeting protocol agreed by the council, which will operate alongside the council's standing orders to ensure we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. I would remind members that this meeting has been live streamed to the public. Can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking to ensure there is no unnecessary background noise and to help with the audio and visual quality of the broadcast. The Council standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during this virtual meeting in the same way as an ordinary meeting, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. You can also remind members to ensure that their chat function is switched on, as if you're remote, and to use this facility to indicate when they wish to speak on a particular item, and please do not speak until invited to do so. Remember to unmute your microphones and switch your camera on when you are ready to speak. As well as broadcast live, a recorded version of this remote meeting will be uploaded onto the council website for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the council. So we'll start the meeting. Are there any apologies for absence?
No apologies, Chair.
Are there any declarations of interest that people wish to make? If they spot them later on, they can do so. We'll move to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 5th of October, 2022, pages 3 to 10. Can someone move there to record? Okay, were there any matters arising from those minutes? No, that's right. Great. Okay, good. This meeting could last less than 3 hours. The speed that we've operated so far. Okay, we move on to item 4, which is the Gwent Regional Fund. Roxanne, are you going to introduce this?
I am, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, so I am. So I think Roxanne is here for questions, really, aren't you, and to help me out.
Yeah, well, we've got lots of those.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to introduce this in terms of give you some background. I'm going to make an assumption that you've had time and an opportunity to read and discuss the papers, and then we'll take questions from you. If that's okay, Chair.
Yeah.
So it's just really to start off with this. This is very much the Regional Partnership Board and looking at one particular element, and that is in particular what was the Integrated Care Fund, but actually is now the Regional Integration Fund. Okay, so it was renamed. And I suppose the purpose of coming to scrutiny today is very specifically to look at the financial implications and liabilities of the Regional Integration Fund and the proposed tapered funding model, and then to determine whether there are any comments you wish us to take back to the Regional Partnership Board. What today isn't is to look at the work that the Regional Integration Fund actually carries out. I mean, that's not what we're looking at today. If you would like us to return on a future date to actually look at more detail at the projects that sit underneath that, we'd be really happy to do that. But in a sense, the urgency for ourselves, for the Cabinet member for the Regional Partnership Board, is to look at the model of funding and in particular the proposed financial liabilities that would fall from the proposed table. So it's just to kind of set that out at the beginning. The Integrated Care Fund, some of you will be aware, was the predecessor to this fund. These are significant sums of money within the social care world, and they very much are a joint venture across the 5 local authorities, social care and the health board. Colleague Roxanne works for the health board, so we are a joint venture today. And I think what's clear is that when the Integrated Care Fund came in, it was seen very much as a way to look at levering transformation and change within social care and health and where the two intersect. And I think that the Regional Integration Fund is a step to try to bring that even further forward. I think sadly what happened perhaps in many ways is that over the years of the Integrated Care Fund, what happened was that many of the projects that were set up and established became part of core funding. And perhaps given the particular years that you look at that covers in terms of austerity, that was inevitable. Is that what ended up happening was many of those projects became propping up of core funding. And the Regional Integration Fund, I think the relaunching of it perhaps at a time when we were beginning to think we might be in an economically rather less challenging, if that was ever possible, position, perhaps was a restating by Welsh Government. And I understand why they've done this, to bring about again that transformation and look to that. The challenge that we have is that that glimmer of economic joy is of course once again gone. And we are now in a position where the financial future looks very bleak. And so the model that Welsh Government have proposed, which is outlined in the paper, which is a tapering model, where projects that currently exist, this is all current work with current staff in it, that we gradually taper off the funding, release funding from that, and then use that funding to develop further new work. Principle, aspiration, great. But right now, at this point of time, we have no additional resource to pick up. We as a local authority, my 4 directors of social services, my colleagues, and the health board, probably a deficit even greater than ours. Absolutely. So we've come to you today really to say that we are seeking your view, your questions, your comments in terms of that proposed funding model and the taper, and what you would like us as a local authority, the health board, the other 4 local authorities, and then to the regional partnership board. Councillor Jason Hughes sits on the regional partnership board. Is our messages back to that board in respect of the taper and for City Council? Okay.
Right. Run from under us, I think, is
okay.
Is what that sounds like, because we have so many questions which you, like the last meeting we had, that aren't on the table, because I don't know where to start really. What I would like to say is, or ask, is that what is the benefit of all 5 authorities and Gabble and TVA being together on this? Is there a financial saving on that?
We don't have a choice in this. This is laid out for us in statute by Welsh Government. So this is laid out in Part 9 of the Social Services and Wellbeing.
Right.
We have to have a regional partnership board, which the 5 local authorities, the health board and the service sector partners join. So it's not a choice. This is laid out for us. This is absolutely, we have to do it. Okay.
Do we still operate as a social services in regards to this? And Torvine the same, and
yes.
You know,
so we still have.
Can't quite see the point.
This is Welsh Government, this is Social Services and Wellbeing Act, is that each of the areas of Wales has a regional partnership board constituted in the way that I've said, that comes together to look at joint areas of work wherever possible. Each of the local authorities and the health board still has our own separate work, but this is areas of work that we look at with a commonality, where we can share things, and particularly where there's an intersection between health and social care.
And it does relate to specific priority population groups as well. So those are defined within the Social Services and Wellbeing Act. So as an example, older people with complex needs, children with complex needs, people with dementia. So there's, as Sally highlights, it's specific population groups where a joint response would be beneficial. So it's in that context that health, social care, third sector, housing partners collaborate to develop models of care.
Yeah, we appreciate the cross-border issues.
Yeah.
It's the operational independence that
I suppose just what I would say is that there is a high degree of operational independence within this. So within each local authority and within the health board, some of these services are delivered regionally, some of them are delivered locally, and there are differences depending on which group and which sort of money. But the actual regional partnership board, the constitution of that is laid out for us in statute.
John?
Yeah, we can ask a question, please. So, listening to what you're saying is you're acting individually as a group as well. Which way do you think is best to deliver your end product? Because obviously you've got Welsh, you keep saying it's Welsh Government policy, but you're acting individually. independently, I should say, then as a group, so there's a lot of crossover here.
Yes,
So for me coming in new, I'm like, there's a lot of singles coming in, bouncing around. Which is the best way? Would you change anything?
I think probably changing this is there's political dimension to that, which I think as an officer I probably shouldn't touch.
But financially, is there a better way?
I think financially, I mean, Welsh Government have chosen this as a way to funnel this grant funding through to us. That's the way that they've chosen to do that. Whether I agree with that or not, I think again is probably for somewhere else, but they have chosen that as the route for this type of funding in order to ensure that we work together and that we have commonality for some of those services with the defined groups that Roxanne has outlined. That doesn't take away the need for us to do all sorts of things for social services on a local footprint, and we still absolutely have those duties, so we have both things in parallel. Is one better than the other? I'm not sure that I can answer that at this stage. I mean, financially, without the regional part, if we chose to walk away together today, which legally would be really challenging, we would lose our share of this money.
I understand.
If we want access to this money.
But it's going to be tapered, so we've got to try and find that taper money anyway.
Or we've got to go back to Welsh Government and say that we cannot, because of the change in the economic circumstances, meet the taper.
I was going to ask a question.
Hang on, I think Pat wanted to go first.
Oh, sorry.
And then you next.
Okay. I'm on a different point.
Okay, Steve.
It was on the money that I take it that the 26 million that's referred to here is in addition to what would be Newport's core social funding anyway.
Yes, it is.
Right. So I understand that is going to reduce on a taper over what, some 5-year period, right? And then at the end, it leaves a sum of money which will be required for this. I'm on page 20 is on the children's social care on that particular table, and so it shows that at the end of the taper that there's a liability there for Newport of £368,138. Yes, so that then will not that will have to come out of. That'll have to be able to come out of Newport's core budget, or the budget will have to be increased basically to cover that. Yeah.
So if we
I'm understanding it correctly.
you are, and so if we wanted to continue with the services that currently funds, so if we wanted to continue with them, yes, you're absolutely right. We would have to have found that money by that.
And the taper, I understand that the authority has no choice but to be part of the partnership because it's the law. Where's the taper coming from? Is that again coming from Welsh Government, or is that local decision?
That's common parlance though in these.
That's laid down as part of the funding.
Yes, it's laid out to the terms and conditions of this particular.
This is not. The Welsh Assembly don't want to fund it. They think it should be funded by us, right?
Well,
Most of the money comes from them. So it's going to be tapered so that we have got more responsibility for the finances.
But we're discussing the plan I suppose we're getting to is discussing the taper, but it's not the budget.
We haven't got a choice.
Yeah, anyway, is it?
No, so I was just going to say, so with the integrated care plan as a standard agenda, now with the transformation plan 20% as well, that posed a cliff edge for us, which introduced a lot of risk in the system. So I was part of the earlier conversations and really advocated for the position of all of our statutory partners within Gwent as part of the conversations with Welsh Government. So their intention with the tapered funding model is to promote sustainability. So it would only reduce within any project or service to 50% is what their intention was. And it took quite some negotiation to agree that 50% it wanted to be much, much harsher as the intention was. So they would like statutory partners to bring existing resources to the table to support those consistent models of delivery across our regional footprints, where working together would be a benefit to the person, the individual with complex needs, essentially. That was the concept behind the guidance. So the guidance is quite prescriptive. And so the table that you have within Appendix A set out what that would mean for you as an organisation if we were to apply to the letter of the terms and conditions prescribed by Welsh Government, what that would mean for you as an organisation and a social services budget particularly.
I'm sorry, did you want to ask another question, Chair, please? The table.
Could you come back on the other question, because Anna wants a question specifically.
I was just wondering, and it might not be relevant, if we assess the impact of the current inflation levels on, you know, what we can deliver.
The current inflation level.
Today's inflation level.
What's it
What
today?
you know, we don't know.
I don't know.
So the position that we're in terms of the work that we're currently running that is funded under the Regional Integration Fund, yes, there will be fallout in terms of pay and inflation.
Yeah.
So we will work over that. I mean, picking up Councillor the Chair's point, I mean, inflation is changing by the minute at the moment,
Absolutely,
isn't it? So
yeah.
it's really challenging. And hence why there is now this particular challenge for the council in terms of the tapers.
Sure.
So as I go back to the beginning, is that if there was no inflation, we would be in a better position to perhaps think about the taper,
Yeah.
and to think therefore about the repurposing of some of this money. But because of the change in the financial environment, we're just not in that
And
position.
potentially the additional 15% that Welsh Government's expecting as well. Okay.
Right, you, Steve.
Yeah, I just, again, it's just one I was on the table that the table shows a number of initiatives and how much each individual initiative costs. So on that table about children, it's the, you know, the enhanced age of care, etc. Yeah. So are all those new projects that owe their origin to the partnership board, or are they ones that were sort of running anyway and the partnership board just picked up the funding?
No, they were all funded under the Integrated Care Fund. So they were existing projects that were funded under the Integrated Care Fund, and then have moved over in the transition to the Regional Integration Fund.
But they wouldn't have been part of Newport's core budget originally.
Newport's core budget has never funded those. Those have always been funded out of grant funding from Welsh Government via the Regional Partnership Board.
So all the projects that are listed on the various tables here are all new ones that have come.
They're not new. Most of them are probably 3-4 years old.
I'm sorry, I mean, they origin lies with the.
Yes, they lie in this funding, not in our core funding, and they always have to.
So all the, you know, so all the support for carers and step up down beds and all the rest of it, all those are additional to what.
So they're all
yes.
things that we've been able to develop in addition to our core funding, because we've had this money through the Regional Partnership Board. I think you could construct an argument to say many of these actually are core services. They are things that, I mean, so for example, if you take enhanced age of care services for children, that's about preventing children becoming looked after. That's a statutory requirement for us. So it's a challenge with some of it about what actually is core, but the funding is very much coming through those grant streams. And we've used that funding to ensure that our core services can be delivered to the best of their ability. None of these services, you can see just by the title of them, are, I don't know, providing donkeys to, you know, one-legged people who happen to be walking past. They are sensible, needed, required projects for some of the most vulnerable people that we live with. They're not luxuries. They are key services.
And top of our political agenda, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
Alan, was it on this specific thread that we own now? Because otherwise I'll bring Parliament in.
No, Chair, just a general observation that what struck me was that, in a sense, if this is not implemented, there will be increased strain and stress on the health service in Wales, particularly in terms of bed blocking. I just wanted to ask, is that correct? Because that seems to be a theme that's running through it.
I mean, I think you're right, Councillor Screen, in the sense that many of the projects within here do relate to services that help support people so that they don't have to go into hospital, and then equally support so that people can come safely out of hospital. So if we have to use the taper, yes, it jeopardises some of those projects, and Roxanne is better equipped to answer this than me, and therefore would jeopardise some of the issues that we have with people coming out of hospital, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Pam?
Can I ask, Chair, this tapering effect, is that phrase a euphemism for budget cut over time? And if that is the case, then we've got hospital admissions and discharges that are seen by the public as problematic at the moment, and ambulance times. And is the having two distinct services, the health service and the social services, are those two distinct services problematic to resolving this problem?
I think that's probably out of my remit as an officer to answer. I think there is such a political agenda in that, in terms of social services and health, and should we be looking at a common service? I think absolutely working together across health and social care is an imperative. And that's what this work is about. It is about us being able to work together to address some of those issues. Are there challenges within that? Yes, every day there are challenges within that. We were talking just before we came in about the real issues that there are in terms of winter planning for all 5 local authorities and the health board, in terms of ambulances, what happens at the front door with emergency services, and then roads, and then people coming out. And I suppose much of the work within this is to attempt to address that. The problem that we've got is that we've got no other budget to help to do that. So does the fact that the structure of health and social care, does that play into this? I wouldn't have said that was a particular issue relating to this particular problem and the taper at this point in time. I think there are bigger issues related to that clearly are at play, but not related to the taper to the RIF at this point in time.
The taper is a budget cut.
Could I comment on
Yeah.
that, if that's okay? Only because so the regional partnership board budget doesn't actually reduce for the full term of the 5-year model. So it goes back to the point around trying to support transformation of the system, the way in which health and social care work together. So the 26.8 million, we have that for the full 5 years. The funding model is intended to support the reinvestment. So we transform all parts of our system, not just continue to focus on the parts that we're currently invested in. So that was the intention. The overall budget remains the same for the RPB, which is why it's up for your consideration, really, if that tapering element is something that is manageable for you as an organisation, or if it's something that, if all statutory partners of the regional partnership board respond, then the regional partnership board is well positioned to have a discussion with Welsh Government.
I doubt if it is acceptable, apart from the fact that it's so high on our priority that we will fund this at the expense of something else. That's the real story. John?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just in the carers training budget and whatever else, obviously social care workers, there's a report that Newport's one of the lowest we're spending money on that budget wise. How does that impact you on these sort of tapering and cutbacks? Is the training, you recruiting okay? Is it, how is that policy?
Recruitment and workforce is a real challenge in all areas of what we're doing. I mean, it's not a Newport issue, it's a Wales UK issue in terms of social care and health, actually, in terms of the rate of vacancies that we've got and the rate of retention. I mean, I have to say social care in Newport, we're not as badly off as some. We have a reasonable rate of retention, although we do have a significant number of vacancies in both adults and children's social care. And we have some real challenges in terms of providing domiciliary care. Where this will impact is that obviously we have lots of money in here, which is very specifically about certain projects and certain staffing, and we have staff in these roles. So it is really quite important that we're able to retain that and retain staff where we can.
With the current situation with the structures everywhere, from its lorry drivers, catering, hotels,
Absolutely.
I mean, it must be hard to recruit, especially when you're on that team of relief. So I just wondered your vision for recruitment and how you can hold on the staff.
There is huge work going on in terms of locally, regionally and nationally in terms of recruitment and workforce. Some of it is about pay, some of it is about terms and conditions, some of it is about a staff group who after 2.5 years post-pandemic are exhausted. I mean, to be frank about that. So there is a whole body of work that we're doing here in terms of how we recruit, how we support, how we retain and how we train our staff, and that is mirrored regionally and nationally. I mean, again, we could come back and talk to you about workforce for hours, basically.
It's mostly about recruitment with the salary inflation, how it's impacted onto this from a frontline basis.
It impacts every day.
We're hoping that Richie Sunak will really on the EU and talk about the Emma.
I heard he's doing the lottery.
Giving your letters to Santa. This might not be for here, but I'm just interested to know, so some of the early intervention programmes, you'd hope that further downstream in a couple of years' time, they're relieving pressures elsewhere.
Yeah.
Do you think that's part of the methodology going to take place?
I think that's part of the methodology that Welsh Government would be thinking, is that you look at innovation and transformation, and picking up Councillor Druitt's point. Yes, the 26 million will be there, but we would be using it to do different things to provide transformation in the system. The problem that we've got, that I keep coming back to, is we need these services.
Yeah,
And the take they came in, as Councillor Mayor says, we would either have to take from somewhere else, and right now I don't know where that would be in social care to fund them, or we would have to cut them. And we need these services as outlined in here.
Yeah,
and we do not have the budget to put in place the taper. So in terms of somewhere down the line, could there be sufficient change and shift? I think what I'd say to you is that if we were looking at a very well-funded social care system, yes. But I think everybody on this meeting would be aware is that that absolutely is not the position that we're currently in.
Okay, thank you.
Lizzie?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know, how is the partnership working with the other local authorities?
It's a really good question. I mean, Councillor Hughes has only just joined the Regional Partnership Board. All 5 cabinet members for social services sit on the Regional Partnership Board. Councillor Paul Cochran was the chair before he changed his role. Council. I think he cross-went. I think the Regional Partnership Board is one of the better. I think the working relationships between health and the 5 local authorities are good. They are good. Does that mean we always get on and always agree? Absolutely not. I think the 5 local authorities probably disagree with the health board fairly frequently, if not often. But I think actually, you know, the very fact that Roxanne and I are both here and can have a conversation is better than in some areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the 5 local authorities work well together. The 5 directors, the 5 heads of children's services, the 5 heads of adult services, but then also operationally, there are some very strong working relationships. Yeah, we have if you look at the 5 local authorities, if you look at Newport, and then you look at Blaen and Gwent, Monmouthshire, Torfaen and Caerphilly, we have very different demographics and we have different needs. And so sometimes accounting for those different needs can be tricky. But I think actually the working relationships are good.
Yeah, that was my second question. Is that obviously I know in Newport there's a big community, so the needs would be different from Torfaen and from maybe Caerphilly and the other local authorities.
And I suppose one of the things that we've been able to reflect in the way that we've managed ICF and now the RIF has been actually to reflect some of that local difference. And I'll just highlight for you the children's elements. Those are the ones I know best. It was previously my role. And what we look at is a similar model of care across Gwent, even though it might be delivered differently in 5 local authorities. And that's actually been a really successful way of working. So for Newport, our edge of care services are delivered in a particular way. They're delivered differently in Blaen and Gwent. And some of that will be to look at the particular needs of our community. So for us, it is ensuring that understanding the particular needs of our Black and minority ethnic community and what we need to do to work with that locally is really important.
And just to echo what you won't see from the report you have in front of you today is that there are also Newport specific elements within the household plan that specifically support the baby community as well. And we have examples in the past through our assistive technology programme where we've had targeted and paid carers work with the baby community, providing them technologies to be connected with their peers and so on. So we've got some really lovely examples of pockets of work that would have only been developed through working together. So, and you know, if you would like a follow-up session where we can give you the total picture for Newport really that's enabled through partnership working, then we can really do so.
That's a quick question. So, you said that unpaid care workers. Have you got any stats on how many people actually adult daycare workers in the areas?
We can provide information about numbers of unpaid carers. We are actually going to people scrutiny in December with a particular item which is about adult carers, and in that we will be looking at the role of unpaid carers in particular. And I'm sure that the reports from that will be open. We'd be very happy to share those with you.
Yes.
We're trying to get ahead around the responsibility and the scrutiny. So that it is being scrutinised, but it's not being scrutinised by us.
Well, because adult carers we look at separately as well as within the regional work. So some elements of this are being scrutinised separately.
Okay, well, we come back to that. Jason, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I just think it's probably maybe useful for you if we come in now, because obviously I sit on the regional partnership board, and I can maybe answer some of Fasina's sort of question in particular. It's a relatively, the local authorities is a relatively new group of people. Obviously, many of them have come in the May election, and but they do get on particularly well within communication, both outside the regional partnership board and generally. So there are lots of benefits, and I think, you know, as a regional partnership board and a model, I'd say I'm supportive of it in the sense that, you know, we do need to work in partnership with health. We do need to work in partnership with our colleagues, and we're talking about vast sums of money. And if we can use that money in a targeted response that sort of improves the health of Gwent generally, then it should be a good thing. The pushback on that, I guess, is that, you know, through the original funding ICF model and the RIF funding now, we've always faced increasingly difficult, challenging financial situations. And I think the position we find ourselves in now is that, I think I'd be fair in saying, Sally, wouldn't I, that the reality is we wouldn't be able to afford a RIF payment situation at the moment. It would put us in dire straits, to be honest. And I think, you know, the conversations that we're having now with ministers as a partnership board is really about suspending the RIF tapering into 23-24, sorry, and to push back on some of the other deadlines, because if we don't do this, that the financial implications for many local authorities across the board are going to be dire. So that's the position that we're in now. You know, we're supporting the regional model, because I think there's a lot to gain from it, but we're not actually and I don't think in any sphere, in any whatever you're talking about in the UK at the moment, you know, I doubt many are in a position to look at growth and sort of investment at the moment. And it doesn't matter what area of society you look at for that. And, you know, social care and health is no different. You know, there's huge challenges at the moment. But having said that, I still think there's a lot of mileage and a lot of very positives to come out of that joint working potential that we do have. And we do get on well with our health colleagues, and we do get on well with local authority colleagues. So my position on it generally, Chair, would be that, you know, we continue to support the regional partnership board, and actually, you know, we do get a lot out of it, and that's some of the complaints that some of the other regions put into it, is that we do get you know, a fair share out of it, but that's also reflective of the fact that we're a city with very different and very complex needs in relation to other areas. So I think it's just to bear that in mind as well. So I think what we should be doing at this moment in time is not rushing into any major decision-making things, but actually agreeing that we're in a position where we have to push back on that taper, certainly now, because we're not in a position to pay it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of regional work, and I'll come back to my concerns about that after Pat.
Just want to agree with what the social services cabinet members have said there. And it seems to me that this tapering model is problematic, because the current financial situation council finds itself in, and current services will suffer if we adopt this.
Well, other services,
does
social services.
Does Roxanne agree with that?
Yes, certainly. So I think, you know, as a regional partnership board, we are unable to accept the consequences of the RIF tapering, because we're not an organisation in our own right. So each statutory partner who bears responsibility for delivering on their own services would need to consider the implications of that essentially. So it's either you stop the project or you cut another service to fund the project to adhere to the terms and conditions set out by Welsh Government. So I think your summary of the position is very accurate.
If I ask you this question, you can tell me if it's none of our business or not.
Okay.
Okay, we looked at the partnership website. It's obviously incomplete there.
Yes.
It looks like a 28 placement, what do they call them, place spots for delegates to the board, 28. But they're all Sally Doe. So what the first question is that how is this made up? We've got Jason and Sally from Newport.
Yeah.
Yes, is anybody else from Newport on this? Or you've got the equivalent social services director and cabinet member from each of the 5 authorities. And then you've got 1 or 2 from Gavo and TVA.
Give you a brief rundown very quickly because this is my full-time job essentially. So you have the Regional Partnership Board Chair, who is always one of the members, and at the moment the Regional Partnership Board Chair is the chair of the Health Board. We also have the CEO of the Health Board, an independent member of the third sector from the Health Board. We also have a special advisor to the board who was previously chair and vice chair, which is Phil Robson. We've got 5 directors of social services, 5 cabinet members of social services, a housing representative. Education representation is provided by the directors of social services because that's typically picked up within their portfolio. We do have a specific member, Will McLean, who represents education as well. And
On behalf
of the 5 local authorities. So
He's the Chief Education Officer in Monmouthshire, and the 5 education officers that he represents.
and then you have a citizens representative, you have an RSL, so sorry, a registered social landlord, so housing association representative on the panel as well. And then we've got Gavo and TVA representing the third sector on the part of the region. And then you've got some reporting officers. So that does make up a membership of near 28, which is why you might see quite a few placeholders on the developing RPB website.
It's a very big membership to get any sensible action done to me. I mean, it looks like we're relying on each of the individual authorities to get on with it. But the whole idea of partnership is to spread ideas, is to work together. Our families in Newport, I've got relatives in Cwmbran and Torfaen and Blaen y Gwent and wherever, you know, so we are not isolated in Newport, never. So I can understand the idea of partnership working, but not necessarily the methodology of it.
I mean, sitting underneath the regional partnership board, and this is within one of the papers, is a structure of, predictably, of groups. So there is a Children and Families Board, there's a When Adult Services Project Board, there's a Dementia Board. So there are a number of boards who then come together at different levels. I mean, in my previous role, sat on the Children and Families Board for the best part of 10 years, and it was a really effective board. I now chair the ISCAN board, which is for children with very complex needs and complex disabilities. And again, what we're beginning to see is some really good working together. The Gwent Adult Board was particularly effective during COVID.
Yeah.
Because they worked really closely together with a number of the issues around, for example, care homes, to address some of those issues and some of the challenges with hospital. So the RPB is there, but then underneath that you've got the worker bees who are putting together day in, day out.
I've got confidence that the constituent parts that are doing their business that they always have. But what we are concerned about is that what are we scrutinising here? How are we? Who is scrutinising how the partnership works with each other and what the benefits are, other than that we've got to do it and that we're going to have to pay for it?
I think picking up on Councillor Hughes' point is that it does bring in a significant body of money. So there is that element of it.
Even after tapering?
Well, even before tapering. So we've had all of this for many years. Without it, we wouldn't have been stuck, really. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah. And it also gives us door to other funding. So we've had other funding streams, for example, the Transformation Fund that came through the Regional Partnership Board. But it also brings some of that cross-fertilisation of ideas, Are they doing things differently in July, monitored when is the health board able to bring something? Just a really small example of that, I would have said that the psychology service, where we previously had very poor working relationships, as a result of this, we now have very good working relationships. So it brings together that working together, working collaboratively, pooling of ideas, as well as the financial resource that comes with the regional partnership group. In terms of the scrutiny of it, I think again, we are very happy to come back and talk to you in some detail about the actual work that is carried out by the.
We would all appreciate it. I think who was first? You and John?
I'll go first then, sorry. The main question I got is, we've got all these different sectors, all these people and everyone working together. It sounds magical, but who's at fulcrum? Who puts it all together? Who sees everything? Who's got the vision? Because obviously,
I think the vision comes from that group of people, is what the attempt is. I think that we have a business support project management team that Roxanne works for, who hold our feet to the fire, for want of a better expression. But I think the bringing together of the ideas and the vision comes from those members.
and you in-house audit yourselves through your committees and who's doing what, and you measured each other on KPIs.
Yes, and we also have quite significant reporting back into Welsh Government on very big chunks of this money. That's the other element of it. There is significant reporting back in terms of what we've done with this money.
It's just interesting when we decide with Welsh Government, says, you know, who does your outside audits, who does your inside audits, and who's ticking all these boxes, because we're here as a scrutiny, we're asking questions, but some of the people we want to ask questions to me fictitious somewhere else. Maybe you're not the right people, so I do apologise asking these questions.
No,
But
we are the right people, because for me, I am the Director of Social Services for Newport. I am the right person. Councillor Hughes is the right person. We are the right people in terms of our representation on the Regional Partnership Board.
I was on the SRS board, okay, and we found out from our own people locally where the problems were in the system.
yeah,
I identified quite a few myself. They also identified quite a few. And then we were able to transform it. But that was unmanageable because it was just the cabinet member and director of each of the authorities and the police. So that was really manageable.
seems a lot of people.
And this doesn't seem to me to be manageable.
Seems a lot of threats, a lot of people, a lot of threats. You know, I'm trying to take it all in and absorb it all, and I'm like, there's a lot of people that we.
Yeah.
I
But
think
28 people have all got to try and agree on this, you know, it could be a.
If you had then, it's
It's like
I think what's interesting though is that 28 people,
15, 13 split.
28 people do agree on the rhythm of tapering. I think that is really clear. I think, I mean, Councillor.
Are we the
Hughes is-
first that this has been?
No,
to,
no, we're the third.
We're the third, so they've all agreed.
I mean, Councillor
Did they
Hughes.
give you any grief?
no, this is the first one that I've attended actually,
Oh,
so.
We made it.
Yeah, and that which I'm very happy to attend and provide further detail. But the agreement is of all partners through discussions that it would be an absolute challenge and significantly detrimental to either current service provision or financial budgets if we were to implement the tapering locally. And just, if you don't mind me picking up on a point, I think you referred to the tapering as though it's a live problem, and it's not. It will only come into effect in April. So as a regional partnership board, we stood quite firm with Welsh Government that we would not be in a position to be able to implement tapering in year one, which is the current financial year. We were the only region to be that honest and transparent with Welsh Government, as to my knowledge, I should say. But we did stand firm on that grounding. So each project and service that you have listed is still 100% funded for this financial year, but the tapering will be realised from April, which is why it's shown as year 2 and beyond there as part of the financial consequences within Appendix A.
Okay, well, we can find what we know from Jason. So, Steve.
I mean, I came in here, you know, the sort of favourable attitudes about it, because having worked for local authorities, I can see great advantages of coming together and sharing. I must say, even though I came in generally favourably, I maybe had some suspicions that maybe the major objective was to, you know, an organisation that just shared out the pot of money so you can all, and you've been quite convincing, as far as I'm concerned anyway, that there is more than that there's real value in the partnership and in the sharing, etc., etc. I just think that didn't come over in this report, which was a shame, I thought, because I've got about 3 questions, which I'm not going to ask now because we've been told that. So and the other comment I was going to make is that quite often, or you know, I say quite often, I've been on the council that long, but since I have been on the council, that often there are comments from various senior officers on the council on reports. And one thing I thought was a bit odd about this report is that, you know, what is the biggest issue, which is where's this money coming from at the end of the taper, really didn't figure at all. And unfortunately, as a committee, I think that we've all got a pretty good idea of what the financial situation is going to be. It would have been quite good as a committee to have maybe a little bit, you know, a little more information on that. I think it would add to the case that I think like everybody else, I suspect that the councils are in quite a difficult situation financially. There's probably a lot of most other councils are, but to actually have some information on that, I think it would be extremely helpful.
Yeah.
He's touched on something I've been thinking about there. It's the pressures that when the financial situation tapers upwards, not everybody's going to be in the same situation. There's going to be different dynamics regarding finances across the board. And this is when it's crucial that the partners actually stick together and if you like, kind of put their money where their mouth is. Sorry, Jason, I don't mean to be derogatory by that. It feels like that. I might be wrong, but I get what that gentleman is saying.
Don't forget to put your hand up when you want to. We got a hierarchy of questions here. Emma?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I'm hitting miss with my connection, so I'm diving in when I can.
It was just a sort of, you know, I think, Steve, as you'll know, we don't actually know what's going to come out of Westminster down to Wales to Newport yet. To have this
We've got a pretty good idea.
I don't think they know, you know, so, and that's like, you know, that makes what you were, you know, us to have an open different.
I mean,
I mean, to be brief, I mean, the council, I'm assuming the council would be very unlikely the council's not sat around, or there aren't people sitting around who are actually working through some various scenarios of where we might be. And
not constantly, the budget is a constant pressure.
Yes.
And what we did a couple of years ago is identify our top 100.
And it really
get into the top 10.
to have some sort of what we call some little concrete meeting.
Yeah. I mean, these issues will be most precious.
Can I just respond to a point? It's a related matter, and it was almost as a regional partnership board and as statutory organisations preempting some of the risks that we find ourselves in now. So last year was kind of coined to be our transition year as a regional partnership board. So last year is when we felt the cliff edge. So some of the information that we can share with you, and Sally's alluded to it, we did significant assessments about what the impact might be should we have to stop some of these services, and they were quite specific to each of our statutory partners and even the third sector. So we were very, very clear on the workforce implications. So we have near 400 staff employed through the regional partnership board services across Gwent that will be reliant on this as a source of income. We know that. The range of service provision that was considered to be absolutely critical to the system flow and some of the operational pressures that they're experiencing. So apologies if the information wasn't quite sufficient, but as you said, we're really happy to come back and provide that more in-depth detail.
Thank you, we appreciate it. Jason?
Yeah, just think coming back, Councillor Whitehead, really is that, you know, just to answer the question, Councillor, there's certainly among the members or the local authorities sitting on regional partnership board, there's a unanimous. I don't want to speak on behalf of those colleagues who haven't actually gone to scrutiny yet, but I think, you know, it's fair to say in relation to the members that there's unanimous feeling that the tapering sort of rift funding side of things will, if we're being honest, will massively destabilise health and social care going forward, and that's the reality of it. Although we know that, you know, lots of projects going forward into 23, 24, 25 will depend on funding. The reality is now that we need to push, for me certainly, that we need to push back on tapering, certainly until the situation stabilises, and we're looking into sort of 23, 24 there as a minimum, really. Otherwise, the impact on citizens, I guess, given the current financial situation and the winter pressures that we're expecting, will be dire, and so that's why we're sort of recommending, I guess, as a group of members that we do push, or we do ask the minister to push back on that RIF tapering.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
So you wanted to say something, Ken?
No, I just acknowledging Jason's come back. Cheers, Jason.
That's fine, Ken. We're all in the same boat, basically, Ken. So.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions? If not, you have another question? Go on. We've got till 8 o'clock.
Yeah, no.
Innovation and improvement is all very laudable, and I think everyone has to innovate and improve. But are the financial circumstances available for us to do that? Are they for the integrated care fund to be able to do that? Given the fact that financial circumstances of the authority that would need to top up funding that was taken away with the taper is not, to my mind, a seemingly practical situation for the time being.
Well, innovation comes from pressure sometimes, so maybe they'll find better ways and cheaper ways of doing things, or more efficient ways of doing things, hopefully. But it will be done, because this is our priority. It's other things that are coming. We're going to get schemes for. Did you want to comment on that?
No,
I think it's self-explanatory,
Yes,
really. We are in between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
And so we move to the recommendation is to consider the financial liabilities and implications of the new regional integration fund and its tapered model. We've considered that. I think we've questioned it as much as we can. Not entirely happy with some aspects of it, but it is what it is. We've made other comments, our job here, I think, is done from that aspect. So can we thank you? Sorry.
Can we push back on that?
Chair, I think I suppose what would be helpful for Councillor Hughes is the support of Scrutiny to push back to say the messaging to our government that we cannot at this point in time implement the taper. And if Scrutiny were able to give that message, if you felt given the discussions that would be appropriate, that would be helpful.
Well, thank you for that. Sorry, I wasn't aware that.
No, I agree with that, but I'm not quite sure how we're going to phrase it, but clearly well, certainly in my as an individual, and just part of the committee, from what I've heard, are really very, very concerned about the potential impact of the taper, because it talks about the financial landscape, and we know that's going to be pretty bleak. It's very difficult to see how the local authority could actually, where the money's going to come from, in the circumstances are almost certainly going to exist in the near future. And secondly, the reason for the concern is the report makes clear that the impact of not being able to run those projects would have enormous impact on social services provision, on children, on hospitals, bed blocking. There's a whole range of disastrous consequences if that potentially are very likely to happen, actually, if that taper operates in the way that it's planned.
Emma?
So it's just an interest period. Will we go back to Welsh Government as a regional partnership board and say next year we don't want to start the taper, or do we ask them for a few years? Or
I think, picking up on Councillor Hughes's point, I think that, and going back to innovation and improvement, I think that what we are keen to do is to go back to Welsh Government to say now is not the time for the taper. It's not to say the taper should never happen, then,
Yeah.
because I think we would all agree that that innovation and improvement is something we are seeking. But that right now, given the financial landscape, it is untenable. Councillor Cox, thank you, because I think you summed that out really well in terms of the challenge that that would pose. And just to reassure you that the Regional Partnership Board chairs are meeting tomorrow actually with the Minister, and there are a series of discussions being put together to have with relevant ministers to raise this.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you've done and for the hard work for it.
John?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, but Emma and Sally just answered the question basically, but it's down to ownership by the Welsh Government. It's not the right time. We know that's a national, we look at the national view on it. I think if we as a body sit together as we are integrated and we're working together, we should have one voice and put it back to them and say it needs to be postponed until it can be done. We see the national government do it for whatever reasons, but I think it's a pushback time and we stick together as one body, one voice.
Thank you, that's really nice
Yeah.
put too. Thank you very much.
So does that clarify our position?
Yes, it does, that's really helpful. And obviously we'll have a notice and meeting as well, so
Essentially comments about
And, yeah, perhaps I'll have a chat with you about
for sure.
how we can get a meeting together where we can actually find out how the mechanics work here.
Of course.
Because we've got a lot of talent in this room who could make some innovative ideas.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us this evening.
Thank you very much for coming, both of you, and you may leave now.
Thank you all the
We were
statement.
trying to keep it late o'clock, like the last bunch.
Thank you for that, Mr. Scott.
For keeping it up.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you.
You can go now, Jason, if you like. Oh, he's gone.
Gone.
He's gone. Didn't need an invite, didn't need the second invite. Okay, so we're back now to business section of the meeting.
So just,
Over to you.
yeah, so just to confirm, in regards to the comments and recommendations, what we take, now Sally and Roxanne know our position. We are looking to Welsh Government to push back. Right now is not a time for the taper. Innovation improvement is something we are seeking, but currently this is untenable because the impact of not having them into these projects would have huge implications. Sally's going to come back and give us the stats on unpaid carers. So as soon as this will be added to our action sheet, as soon as I get those figures, I'll send them on to you. Also, we are arranged with Sally and Roxanne about the further actual work of the RPB. So we'll look to see if we can fill up either March or April of that. As soon as I get some updates, I can update the forward work programme. So, yeah, that's all of everything that I've been taking from.
Anything you'd like to add to that? You, Steve?
If we do look again in future to work in the board,
Yes.
I don't know if you're agreeing, but I thought it'd be really good to see some examples of we were asking, just what the benefits are of all working together. And I think some information on some good examples maybe.
I was with
on that, on the where it is actually successful and partnership is quite evident.
Sorry, I jumped you.
Sorry.
You-
I was just, it was just a scrutiny newbie question. Will we find out what the outcome of this asking Welsh Government to
Yeah, so what happens is I'll send the comments recommendations to both Sally and Roxanne. They've already got the information, verbally that obviously the committee aren't happy with this, we want to push back. But I'll send it in writing to them as well.
Yeah.
These will be in the minutes as well, and I can see.
So you'll see it back.
Yeah, I see to get.
Can we find out what the comments were from the other two that have already met, and maybe what the next two that meet as well, so that we can have some idea about what people are thinking across the partnership?
I'm not going to be dissimilar, is it?
John?
No, I was going to echo what you just said, Chair, and it's about when you said the board, the committee's hierarchy, how it works, but how we work together. Now, we're having a meeting here for Newport, the others having meetings, but how do we understand each other? Who's thinking what? Are we all on the same table together? We all asking the same questions, get the same answers, we pushing back together for one voice again. So it's just going back to what you said about it highlighting it really.
I haven't thought about that, John, but you're right. I was thinking about how these people work together, okay? How do the scrutinies, who are scrutinising these people work together? Perhaps there's an element
Strong it together.
of partnership between us
I think so.
as well, which is missing in this equation.
Specific partnership, well,
We'll have a scrutiny partnership. We'll have the scrutiny partnership.
There's no point in saying one thing, they seem something else, and it gets lost.
The scrutiny partnership board will be 70 members, okay? And then the scrutiny partnership will be 140 members.
Just think of Christmas party time, it'd be brilliant.
I do agree with you, Stephen, about case studies as well. If you can show examples of how things work, right? It may have only one that ever worked, but at least it's one.
So, going to the screen on my head, was there any comments or recommendations that you would like me to include as well, or are you happy with what we're going to be putting forward?
I'm happy. It was a good enough conversation.
My eyesight.
It's that was a valid point. I think Councillor Mayor made there about other scrutiny partnerships. It'd be nice to know their views. Are they similar or are they poles apart? I don't know.
That's good. Anything from Alan or Matthew? Are you happy that we move along?
Are we going to find it?
Yes, Chair, quite happy. Thank you very much. I think.
Yes, from me, from what I can gather, I'm happy to kind of move on and for your guidance on this one.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Are we going to find out the result of the meeting with the Welsh Government tomorrow?
Yeah, we can Did you have a comment, Matt? Sorry. Oh.
No, sorry, I was just commenting that I'm happy to follow your guidance on this comments made. Sorry, I've got a real bad cold.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, we look forward to seeing you in the flesh sometime.
Yes.
See you next.
Yes, well, you will see me very soon. I not very well at the moment, so I don't want to share this lurgy with you all.
I'm sorry to hear that. Get well soon.
Hopefully.
Okay. So we nailed that then, I think. We'll move on to the work programme.
Yeah, so our next meeting is in a fortnight, Wednesday the 9th. So we've got the Norse Joint Venture Partnership. This will be the second time that it's come to committee. We'll have the Managing Director, Lyndon Watkins, come, Tracy McKim, Head of People and Transformation, and also Dan Cook, who's the Civic Centre Manager. We'll also be having the EAS value for money reports coming through. So we'll have the Chief Education Officer, Sarah Morgan, Ed Price as well, Managing Director coming for that. Then later in December, the 7th of December, we've got the VAWDA SB report. This is an annual report which normally goes to the committee. And also we got the Shared Resource Services update, which again is an annual update which comes to the committee around the same time. And then the last part of the report is just the action sheet. Apart from the one action, I think last week about the community safety be considered as a work programme item. I'm currently working with Dan Dent about that to suggest the date and time to bring it to committee. Likely to be March or April, but as soon as I got a date in place, I can let the committee know. And all the other things we actually see is already action chair, so we're all at the date.
Any comments on that?
I'm going to ask a couple of questions, please, about the work programme, but we haven't got that specific.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Okay.
yeah, sure.
And John, you want to?
In your report, you mentioned that the cabinet has put together a work programme.
What we do when we try to work out the forward work programme, we look at Cabinet's forward work programme initially, then we work with the heads of service as well. We look back for the previous year to see what reports come annually, such as SRS comes and the EAS, we discussed the wellbeing plan as well, those always come. And then we asked the heads of service, is there anything that you want to bring to partnerships for us to make comments on? If they don't, then we discuss with the chairs to see if they have any suggestions as well. Then we bring the draft annual forward work programme over to the committee. But at the end of the day, the forward work programme is totally up to you. You can add in takeaway items and as you please.
So are we mirroring the programme that the cabinet are looking through?
Yes, so for example,
Sort of.
so yeah, with for example, in September we had the market stability report. That was requested by Phil Diamond to come to committee and to have comments or recommendations before it went to cabinet and then go into council. So yeah, it does happen that sometimes we are asked for scrutiny input before it goes to cabinet and then council. And this was an example as well. This report was going to cabinet as well with our comments and recommendations, but it is not going to council. So,
and then, sorry, just try, if you don't mind, Chair, just try to clarify. Because obviously I think it's what my fourth meeting is. When we items on the agenda are usually reports.
yes,
As you say, annual reports and regular reports. But items on the agenda don't have to be a report, do they? I mean, we can look at aspects of the council's working with a partner that's not necessarily the subject of a report.
So for example, with there's some things which have never come for scrutiny, such as even though it falls under the remit of partnerships, community safety. Now that you've requested for it to come, we were going to try and bring it to committee anyway, but now that you specifically asked as well, gives us a chance to go to talk to Janice Dent and community safety partners as well to bring a report.
So it can be an area of work. It just not a specific report. Yeah.
No, that's fine. Yeah, you can, as long as it falls within the remit in terms of reference, I can send it to the committee as well.
Well, I was going to ask you for that next. Is there a list of partnerships that the authority has? Because I'm not sure I know them.
We've got, you sent them to me, didn't you? But
Yes. Yeah.
didn't everyone get them?
Yeah, no, not so this is when the first committee was formed.
We'll send them out again.
I can send it into reference to
That
you.
would be really helpful.
Yeah, no, it is. Not only you had a bite, because if you tried to read it before, you would.
There's a lot of
But now you were thinking, oh yeah.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll send that again.
Just got the future meeting with Norse.
Yes.
What would be the parameters with the discussion scrutiny? Because I'm sure, like in the council, we've had engagement with them and emails not responded to and or got lost in translation. So, what specific sort of parameters are we looking at?
You can ask about the service provision, if that's something that you're looking to find out about the performance of the, working with the partnership. You can ask that.
Yeah, I don't want to bring in any individual cases that you've got a couple of them. But what I'm trying to say is, when you send an email and you want to respond like who's the right person, I've been bouncing around a little bit, and basically, yeah, I'll say, where's my email? You're going to get back a couple of weeks ago. So it seems to be a lost in translation with them, but it just seems, or someone's taking on the case, and then it comes out, you have to chase, oh, they left now. But nobody got back, it's dead end all the time.
It's something you can feedback to them, certainly. If there's anything in particular, then it'd be best to talk to it outside. But yeah, if it's something.
For instance, performance, I mean, we're speaking communication, so I'm looking at the bigger picture of like communication. Somebody leaves, that doesn't mean that's the end of the case, is it? It's got to be somebody takes over that case, surely. So continuity, it seems to disappear with them.
Yeah,